Hi everyone, welcome to the Psychology of Dating podcast. You're listening to me, Nadine Newkirk. I'm both a clinical psychologist and a dating coach. Today's episode, I'm going to talk about, can you change someone you're dating? How do you know if they're going to change a behavior or aspects of their personality, and what is actually possible to change? You really like dating them and there's a lot that's going really well, but there's one or two aspects where you really want that to shift, to move forwards. And this topic was actually brought up by a listener of the podcast. They listened to my episode on whether or not, how to know when to settle down with someone and when to stop looking. And they asked this question, how lots of people think, I can change them. And they keep dating, but what parts of personality or circumstances or characteristics can actually be changed? So just a reminder, if you have any topics or questions, send me a message via my website, and the link to that is in the episode show notes. I also have a request. If you are enjoying this podcast and would like to help spread it around and get more visibility, if you could pick one episode that particularly resonated with you and share it with one person. And it's amazing how this information can spread by doing that. So if you can pause this episode right now, take that 5 seconds to copy the link and send it to someone else, and who knows, you might be giving them a gem of information. Okay, so first of all, looking at, can someone change when you're dating them? Can they change their behaviors, their personality? And this comes down to a question of, in psychology, they call it nature versus nurture. So nature is genetics, things that you are born with, that's been passed down from family members. So it might be a certain health condition that is genetic and it's passed on through the genes, and that's something that you can't change. You have it or you don't. That's nature. And you also have nurture, parts of you that are shaped and grown through your experiences, people around you, circumstances shape you throughout your life. For example, maybe a young woman grows up in a family who really value independence and speaking your opinion and sharing your feelings, and this shapes her to build that assertiveness skill, and also helps her then join workforces or debate teams where that skill is enhanced, and the environment then shapes it to refine that skill even more. Whereas someone else might grow up in a family where it's an environment of conflict avoidance, and it's not really encouraged to share feelings or speak up. And then that makes it harder to, this person doesn't join the debate team, doesn't have those circumstances to shape that skill. So what aspects are nature versus nurture? Well, if we think about things that are structural in your DNA, so for example, if you are born with a certain eye color, this has been passed down from genes from other family members. But we know that there is neuroplasticity. This is where your brain is constantly having changing neuronal pathways, that the more you do a different skill or hear different news, your brain is integrating this and changing the way it is firing, even changing brain structures. They've shown, for example, Buddhist monks who meditate for hours and hours, that they have reduced activation and shrinkage of the amygdala, which is the fear center of the brain, and they have increased activation in the prefrontal cortex, which is for high order thinking, rationalizing, seeing the bigger context. So being able to pause, notice your emotions and your feelings, reducing that automatic reaction actually helps shape and change the brain. And when we think about personality or even mental health diagnoses, these can be changeable, that someone is constantly changing throughout their life. I often tell my clients that you might be diagnosed with anxiety, depression. This doesn't mean that you meet that criteria later down the track. Some people might meet those symptoms for a very long time and other people won't. And this really depends on each individual circumstances, what tools you have, what's going on around you, the context. So it's a really hard question to ask is, can someone change? Because basically, yes, we all have neuroplasticity. There is always something that can be changed. However, the rate of change and whether someone wants to change is a very different question. I'll give an example. Imagine someone is dating someone who has difficulties with alcohol, and this creates problems in their relationships where they're drinking in excess, and it means that they go missing at times, don't reply to texts, or their emotions can be more volatile during those periods. And when they're not drinking, things are really great and they could see great potential, but they really want them to change and stop drinking that alcohol. There's a number of different steps that need to happen for that person to want to change and be able to shift and change. In the therapy called Motivational Interviewing, which was developed for people with substance alcohol difficulties, they talk about 5 stages of change to be able to shift things. So first of all, you have the pre-contemplation stage. So this is where someone's not even contemplating to change. They don't think it's a problem. It's not on their mind. Maybe everyone else can see, look, things could be easier if you're not doing this. But for them, they're in denial or they don't see it and it's not on the horizon. The next stage is contemplation. So this is where someone's thinking, I don't really like those hangovers, or I regret that I said that when I was drinking. And they're thinking there could be some benefits to stopping, but they're not at the stage yet to actually make any action. There's just some thoughts that occasionally come up. Then you have the preparation stage where someone is actually thinking, okay, this is something I want to shift. So they're thinking, how could I do this? Do I need professional help? Do I gradually do it? Do I need to go to rehab? Do I need to get new skills in certain areas, manage emotions in different ways? What do I need to do? So you're preparing. And then the next stage is action, is actually being able to follow through, to book the appointment and consistently see a psychologist, or to consistently practice new ways to manage a difficult emotion. And then we also have the maintenance stage, keeping up with those skills. It's one thing to go to one psychology session. It's another to address something maybe for 2 years where you go fortnightly. And depending on the degree of the difficulty, things can take shorter or longer. It's individual for everyone. So you can see it's not so simple to make change. You have these 5 stages. And to go through these 5 stages, you need that person to have the awareness. To change anything, we need to be aware of it. And then also to be able to have the willingness and self-motivation. We know that just telling someone this is bad for you, I don't think you should do it, doesn't create that internal motivation for change. The whole therapy motivational interviewing is how to talk to someone to help them build their own motivation. They talk about it like you've got 2 committees in your head. One is the reason why I should keep drinking. It feels good. I have fun in the moment. I don't have to think about those stressful things. And you have another committee with the reasons why you shouldn't drink. I get a headache. I don't like how I yell sometimes. And if someone else tells you this is all the reasons why you shouldn't drink, often it forces people to go to the committee of why they should drink. And they actually strengthen and hold down on that opinion rather than going to their own reasons of why they shouldn't do it. So sometimes the more you try and push, the more you try and force someone to change, sometimes that can backfire and the less likely it is to happen. And it's a whole lot of effort because you could bring someone's awareness to it. You also need to get them to contemplate changing. You need to get them to plan changing. You need them to take action and you need them to have the maintenance for change. And it depends what you're tackling here. Maybe you're tackling someone putting the dishwasher on at night And that could be an easier task than getting someone to address childhood trauma and all the impacts, which then is feeding into their drinking in the present day. We don't know how much backstory is feeding into the difficulties they're having right now. So, all this being said, imagine someone is changing a little bit. How do you know if it's worthwhile to stay dating this person, to stay in a relationship? And I've got a couple of questions for you to ponder. One is, what is the rate of change? And are you willing to accept that? So if it's a major issue and it's really a deal breaker in your life, maybe you really want kids and this person says, I'm a maybe, kind of no, and you're wanting them to change to a maybe yes or a yes, and they're like, I'll probably know in about 10 years, but you know with your biological clock you want kids the next 2 years, that's maybe a deal breaker for you because the rate of change is not fast enough. Or maybe you see someone cutting back on a bad habit, but it is so gradual that it's really not going to make much of a difference in the long term. It might take 20 years till they actually get to the place where you want them to be, and even then it might not be how you'd like it. So it's really thinking about, do I like how this person is showing up for me now, not how I wish them to be in the future? We really want to just stick to right here and now. The next question is, how are they communicating with you and respecting you as you're talking about the problem, the thing that you're wanting to change? Maybe someone really wants to change. They have a difficulty with giving up smoking, and it's something important to you because you want to have kids and a smoke-free environment. And maybe they've been smoking for a while, but it's something they're already in the preparation/action phase, and they're making changes. They might not be successful. Maybe they try some patches and then it didn't work, or they tried seeing a counsellor but it wasn't the right fit. But you can see that they're constantly communicating with you, showing willingness to talk about the impacts on you, really showing up and caring about your feelings in the process. That's very different than someone who is shutting you out, is getting angry at you, who's not wanting to talk about the issue with you, who doesn't care about the impacts on your feelings. Another question to ask yourself is, what's the energy you're putting into this relationship and the return you're getting? So just like if you put money endlessly into a pokie machine and you're not getting anything back, you're going to be spending all your money and you only have limited energy. You work, you see friends, family, you're working yourself, your health. It's a busy life. And yes, you could spend 95% of your energy on helping someone or hoping that they'll change, but is that worth it? And that's only a question you can answer in your individual circumstances. And then asking yourself, how long has this issue been going on for? And when did it start? Maybe someone is feeling really down because they lost their job and you've been dating them for 6 months and this just happened in the last month. So you know baseline how your relationship can be, and this is an external circumstance which is interrupting, but you know that they're working on getting supports or finding a job or getting some meaning from having this time off. And you can see that this is a temporary situation versus you've been dating this person for 3 years, they've had an ongoing issue and you haven't seen any change. Maybe, they consistently don't reply to your texts and don't have that respect where, when you're upset about it, that you can talk about it or think about compromises. So all this being said, I imagine you might be feeling like, oh, it's really hard to change someone. And yes, that it's hard for you to change someone else because they are a different person. So I really want to actually flip the question of, can people change, to rather, can you change how you respond to this circumstance to get the outcome that you want? How do you make changes in your life to then shift what you want in your dating relationship experience? This is going to cost you much less energy and is also going to be much more effective because you are your individual person and you have the capacity for change, that you have the capacity to go through those 5 stages of pre-contemplation to contemplation. There's a bit of an issue here in the relationship that I'm in. Preparation of what can I do, action of how do I go about changing it and actually doing it, and then maintaining that. So maybe you've noticed, okay, I tend to be with people who talk a lot in the relationship. And you think at first the problem is this person talks too much and they're cutting me off, or they're always talking, extensively about their life and not about mine. Let's shift that from trying to get the other person to talk less to you being able to step in. Maybe it's bringing it up and talking about it openly. Hey, I'd love to share a bit more about my life. Can we give you time for that? Maybe it's just practicing jumping in. Maybe you have difficulties kind of jumping in, or maybe you realize you actually have all these skills, but with this particular person, they are very verbose, they are very talkative, and maybe this isn't the right connection for you. So it's much easier to look at your side. In a therapy group that we run at the hospital I work at, we call it cleaning up your side of the street. So you can sweep your side of the street, you can make it nice and tidy, you can get the concrete looking good, trim the trees, but you can't control someone else's side of the street. Someone has their own agency to keep it messy or clean, and it's not your job to go in there and change it. That takes a whole lot of time and energy. So here are some questions for you to help try and shift the situation you're in. 1, get some awareness. Is there any unhelpful beliefs or thoughts that are holding you back from taking action? Maybe you have a fear of breaking up with someone because you have this scarcity mindset that no one else is out there. And so you're not willing to actually step up and assert yourself in case the relationship might not work out. Maybe you're uncertain of what your values are and what you really stand for. What you don't want in the relationship or what you don't want from the person, but you haven't really clarified what you do want. And that is really important. Maybe there's a skills deficit, and that's normal. We all have different skills that are our strengths and ones that we don't have yet. And maybe it's helpful to get skills in being able to clarify your values or stand up for yourself or ask for what you want. I recommend you go to the episodes I have on the fast skills or dear man skills. You could also ask yourself, do I have enough information about this situation? Do I even have the right problem? Maybe you think the problem is how the person you're dating dresses, when actually you dig down into your thoughts and realize it's more a fear of you have about other people judging you. You don't actually mind that they wear dorky clothes, but you have a fear of what, your parents will say or your friends will say or think. And then maybe it's more about cultivating that self-confidence, that self-validation, knowing it's okay for you to have different preferences than other people. Okay, everyone. I hope this was a helpful episode to shift that thought from how can I change them to how can I change my own reaction to the circumstances I'm in, because this is the thing that I have most control over. You might not have control if someone's cheating, but you do have the ability to say no and end a relationship that isn't respecting your boundaries. You might not have control about how many times the person leaves the kitchen cupboards open or plays a lot of loud music. But you do have control to think about, is this important to me in the bigger picture? And maybe in the bigger picture, you're okay to put up with this one difficulty in the relationship. So it really is unique to your circumstances, and it's important to ask yourself questions of what can I do? Okay, everyone, have a lovely day or night wherever you are, and I'll speak with you next week.